Hey, everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Crouch. This podcast is sponsored by EliasCrouchMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Today, we are discussing so far of 2022, my number one favorite film, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's directed by the Daniels, not necessarily brothers, but they go by the Daniels, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Schnert. Um, they have short films under their belt. They're also music video directors. Their first feature film um, was Swiss Army Man back in 2016 with Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe. And Daniel Snert also directed The Death of Dick Long, which was another very interesting, I think A24 produced film as well. So kind of going along their surrealist, absurdist, sometimes comedic type filmography. Everything, everywhere, all at once very much fits in that same mold. The thing is, I think that everything, everywhere, all at once is the antithesis of that. It takes everything that's good about their previous filmography. And they've also directed some television to Children's Hospital, Aquafina, 2020 television show, and Kwan also directed some Legion back in 2019, which was also very trippy and surrealist as well, kind of absurdist Noah Hawley show. So, with saying all that, Everything Everywhere All at Once is a 2022 American absurdist comedy drama film written and directed by the Daniels, who co-produced it with the Russo brothers. The Russo brothers, everyone knows them generally for working in the MCU. And I can kind of feel that kind of lingering over this film in the best way possible, kind of the remnants of like an MCU esque type movie. It's got this action, imagination, a lot of kind of quick chatter here and there, these family ties and emotional bonds that happen throughout the film. It's very fulfilling when it comes to kind of having all spectrums of the film told. There's fun, there's action, but there's also this real down to earth realism between the family that I actually like. Um, so it stars Michelle Yeoh as a Chinese American woman being audited by the IRS, who discovers that she must connect with a parallel universe versions of herself to prevent a powerful being from causing destruction, um, the destruction of the multiverse. Um, Stephanie An Shu is starring in it. Jonathan Ke Kwan, Jenny Slate, Harry Slum Jr., James Hong, and Jamie Lee Curtis all appear in supporting roles. So it's got a stellar cast. I think it's one of the best casts that I've seen for uh, in filmography this year. I'd say up there with like the Northmen, who they had stacked cast of Ethan Hawke and Alexander Skarsgård, and um, all the other films that I can't think off the top of my head. But there's other films like that just have like stellar packed cast in it. Who else was in the Northman? The Northman, Nicole Kidman. That was the other one that I was trying to think that was in the Northman. Um, all phenomenal actors, and you can see that just because they aren't shown the whole time. Like maybe we're just having Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie here and there. She's in this movie. She's not like a support. It says supporting role, but she's basically in it just as much. So the film has been described as a swirl of genre anarchy and features elements of black comedy, science fiction, fantasy, martial arts film, and animation. I think that the way that this is told, this is the best quote unquote multiverse movie that has come out probably since the Spider-Verse movie that came out in 2018. Just with the way that it's having the ability to tell the multiverse story, but also on top of that, they're able to um, reel all these stories back into a satisfying conclusion. Cinematography by Larkin Simple, same cinematographer for the Swiss Army Man and Cop Car. So it's a running time of 2 hours and 20 minutes, a budget of 25 million, which absolutely blows my mind. This movie feels like it should be like a $50 million movie with just the cast alone, the stunt works that are having to go into it, the fact that I'm pretty sure that this was created during COVID. Like a lot of it was shot during COVID, so it's just amazing that they were able to get something of this magnitude for this project as well. Because it feels, the thing about this movie is it feels so broad scoping, it's so big, but yet we're able to focus on like the most interesting parts and interesting um, actors that are in it. Michelle Yeoh is carrying the majority of the story on her back, but there's so many other elements of this that she gets to play. She gets to kind of play like the opposite version of herself. Like Michelle Yeoh is, I think she's a classically trained martial artist and dancer, and so she kind of gets to play both sides of the role. And just because she is on, kind of middle age in correlation to a lot of leading women that are normally in their 30s or 40s or so. Um, I think she's close to like 50. It's amazing what she's doing in this movie, and she absolutely sells it. Um, Let me see off the top of my head. She's 59, and it's amazing what she's doing in this movie, and she fine as wine. Or fine like wine. Get better with age, is what I mean. So Quan Ishner researched the concept of the multiverse as far back as 2010 and began penning the screenplay as early as 2016. Originally written for Jackie Chan, the lead role was later reworked and offered to Yo. Principal photography began in January 2020 and wrapped up in March as the COVID-19 pandemic reached the United States. Actually, I did hear that this was like a shoot in, I think, like 39 days. So this movie was technically shot all before the COVID pandemic had hit the United States in the middle of March 2020. Um, which kind of tells me how they were able to do all of this. They were working on a super tight uh, uh, timeline, so this really encouraged them to get the best of everything they possibly could, maybe multiple times a day. I listened to the Directors Guild podcast, and they were talking about how essential all of these different scenes were. And what they had tried, how all, because of the editing of this movie, if you've seen it, how crazy and chopped up it can be. So the majority of it was all, you know, written out. So the storyboards were out, so they knew what they had to get. And then what they said is they tried to dedicate specific days to being those specific characters, because they're basically having to play different characters and different timelines. They tried to navigate these certain scenes to this day, these certain scenes to this day, so that they were playing their respective characters different days. Now that didn't always happen, they said, but that's essentially what happened. Um, it sounds like the cast really liked working together. I heard that they were doing. It felt, they described it a lot as shooting this film as to going to like summer camp. They said that they would always start off the mornings with doing some sort of yoga or dance or something correlated to kind of get everyone energized and ready. But it was pretty interesting. Just check out the Directors Guild podcast if you're interested in more behind the scenes on this, crazy movie. And I say crazy in the best way. So the film's soundtrack features music composed by Son Lux, who is an American experimental band, um, and including collaborations with musicians Mitski, uh, David Byrne, Andre 3000, and Randy Newman. That's about as random as it can get, but you got everybody. Um, Everything Everywhere All at Once premiered at South by Southwest on March 11th, 2022. and began a limited theatrical release in the United States on March 25th, before a wide release by A24 on April 8th. The film received widespread critical acclaim. Reviews praised its imagination, direction, Yeo's performance, and handling of themes such as existentialism, nihilism, and Asian American identity. And I think that it does an excellent job of showing the 2 feet that the parents in this movie are having to really deal with, being part Asian and then part American, and how those themes of that identity are shown in this movie feel very realized. It feels like the actual experiences of real people. And it's not just for that Asian American experience. You can kind of correlate that experience with other like the Indian American experience, or the Black American experience, or the Mexican American experience, kind of like having your foot in two holes of identities, but you're not exactly 100% this, or you're not 100% that. So you're kind of like in two separate areas at the same time, and you're having to deal with either not being Asian enough, or not being American enough, or something like that, of that nature. And I really liked how that was kind of put under a microscope, and we really got to see the ins and outs of how that affects individuals. And so it has grossed over $89 million worldwide, which is amazing for something under the A24 banner, surpassing Hereditary in 2018 as A24's highest grossing film of all time. And if you've seen Hereditary, you know that that was a crazy horror film. And uh, horror films generally generate a lot of money, and they don't cost nearly as much. So that's the whole reason a lot of like the Blumhouses of the world are doing so well. But yeah, I mean, this is amazing that they were able to get all of this produced under $25 million. It blows my mind that, how did they pay for everything? That's my thing. Um, so let's, I think I've said all the good things I can about the movie. Like I said, right now in the middle of it's June 1st is tomorrow. Um, yeah, I would say that this right now is still my number one movie, just from the way that it blew my mind, the way that it was, kind of it pulled the heartstrings in the right ways that I really wanted. I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 for this film. So that's one of the highest ratings I've given in a very long time. I haven't had a chance to really go back and rewatch it again, but it still sticks with me to this day. So let's hop into the spoilers, and we're going to discuss part one of the plot, and then continue through the story of part one, part two, and I guess part three. Yeah, all at once. So yeah, thank you for watching, listening. Look at our podcast. I hope you found this review useful in obtaining some more interesting and relevant filmography and content. Be sure to check out the patreon.com/lookitoutpodcast for this review early and in full. If you're watching on YouTube, then you're getting a condensed review, or if you're listening on any other platform, it's going to be a condensed review. But be sure to check out the Patreon. We have our website, LuckyDogPodcast.com, where you can get all the links, get all the social medias, and stay up to date with everything Lucky Dog Podcast. Thank you for listening, watching Lucky Dog Podcast, and here is the plot for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Part one, Everything. Evelyn Quan Wang is a Chinese American woman who runs a struggling laundromat with her husband, Waymond. Tensions are high due to the laundromat being audited by the IRS. Additionally, Waymond is trying to give Evelyn divorce papers. Evelyn's demanding father, Gong Gong, has just arrived from China, and Evelyn's daughter, Joy, has been trying to get her mother to accept her girlfriend, Becky. Everything, ironically, is what we're talking about, but everything that they are talking about in this first um, little chunk of part one is it's relatable. You know, the uh, the relatability for these um, storylines can be cross general crossed over between other stories of other people from other places. Is what I'm saying. Um, while at the IRS building for a meeting with the IRS inspector, Deidre Bayadri, uh, Wayman's personality changes when his body is briefly taken over by Alpha Wayman, a version of Wayman from a universe he calls the Alpha Sphere, the Alpha Verse. Sorry. Uh, Alpha Wayman explains to Evelyn that many parallel universes exist. Since every choice made creates a new universe, the people of the Alphaverse, led by the late Alpha Evelyn, developed verse jumping technology that allows people to access the skills and memories and body of their parallel universe counterparts by fulfilling specific conditions. The multiverse is being threatened by Jubo Tubaki, formerly Alpha Joy. Her mind was splintered after Alpha Evelyn pushed her to extensively verse jump. And when they're verse jumping, they're jumping into another version of themselves in another universe. Um, they're able to like absorb let's just say that I'm a podcaster in this universe. Let's just say that if I was verse jumping, then I could verse jump into somebody that automatically knew martial arts, and all of a sudden, just like you're in the Matrix, you know martial arts. Um so Jubo Tubaki now experiences all universes at once and can verse jump and manipulate matter at will. With her godlike power, she has created a black hole like, quote unquote, everything bagel that can potentially destroy the multiverse. So, by jumping too much into these multiverses, they've created the black hole bagel, everything bagel. So it's an extremely low concept type of movie that has, if you don't actively understand what's going on, it's easy to get, lost in the sauce, so to speak. So let me see. Evelyn is given verse jumping technology to fight Jubo Tabaki's verse jumping minions who begin converging in the IRS building. It's insane. I mean, how the people are all of a sudden just taken over almost like zombie like, but then instead of becoming zombies, they become, ultra fighters because they've verse jumped, and their minds kind of being taken over in a way. It's amazing what she's able to do and the powers that are happening. It's very it's kind of like the Matrix meets Star Wars, using the Force kind of thing, but with the wrapping of the MCU's multiverse technology or the multiverse thinking. So let me see. So yeah, Evelyn is given verse jumping technology to fight Jubo Tabaki's verse jumping minions who begin converging in the IRS building. Evelyn learns of Wayman's plans to divorce her and discovers other lives where she made different choices, flourished, such as becoming a kung fu master and a movie star instead of leaving China with Wayman, who becomes a successful businessman. And it shows um, kind of the alternate lives that these people would have if they had never decided to come to America, or leave their homes and end up marrying each other and that, and going off in the sunset kind of thing. Would they have been happier not running off in the sunset with each other? And that's a really interesting concept. And despite the whole multiverse science sci-fi angle of it, that's extremely it draws for really strong dramatic um, storytelling. And some of the lines that come out at the end of this movie really pulled at the heartstrings. And I was like, this is amazing. It felt like there's lines that they say to each other at the third act that feels like this movie was written all the way from it. The tapestry was written all the way from the, I would rather run an I think the husband Wayman says something like, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil what they say at the third act, and I'm going to say it wrong because I can't remember off the top of my head. But he basically says that I would rather be, struggling with you, and running a laundromat than anything else in the world. And that's the bare basics of their love together. They're struggling together, and he despite the divorce papers coming together, I think that that's one of the most effective lines that could happen within the movie. So let's continue, so it has a little bit more of an effect. So yeah, they basically see the different lives they could have lived. Alpha Wayman comes to believe that Evelyn as the greatest failure of all Evelyns of the multiverse, and has the untapped potential to defeat Jobu Tubaki, which, by the way, that's the ultimate version of her daughter, the multiverse version. Alpha Gong Gong instructs. Now, this is hilarious how her father, everyone ends up becoming multiversed, by the way, and all of these like random different subsections of I think Wayman enters his multiverse self by clicking like a Bluetooth, or by having a fanny pack and like removing a piece of gum and eating a piece of gum. It's like random things they're told to do to tap their inner selves and become their multiverse selves. Like at one point, there's a fight where the security guard has to get like a butt plug up his ass, has to get like a trophy up his ass to become the ultimate version of himself. And that's where some comedy comes in, and it's just kind of ultra ridiculous. And the scenes that happen in there are just almost undescribable at this point, because it's just like, what is the most ridiculous thing you could probably have to do in an IRS building? And you got to do it to become the ultimate version of yourself, whether it's you like it or you don't. So there are some crazy fucking scenes in this movie with them trying to become their alpha self. So Alpha Gong Gong instructs Evelyn to kill Joy, to hinder Jobu Tubaki, but Evelyn refuses. She decides she must face Jobu Tubaki as by gaining the same powers as her. So she verse jumps repeatedly while battling Jobu Tubaki's minions and Alpha Gong Gong's soldiers. After the battle, Alpha Wayman is killed by Jobu Tubaki in the Alpha verse, and Evelyn's mind overloads. Let's hop into part 2. Evelyn's mind splinters, and she discovers other bizarre universes, including one in which humans have hot dogs for fingers, and she is in a romantic relationship with Deidre, who is played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And Jamie Lee Curtis is such a gem in this movie. I got to say that she is so fucking funny. She is playing this ultra serious IRS hard ass in one scene. The next scene, she's literally doing kung fu, Matrix style against Michelle Yeoh, and then another scene, she's basically playing a zombie, like a Michael Myers version of herself. It is crazy, and you just never know what you're going to get. And she plays all of them amazingly. And now we get this one universe where Michelle Yeoh and Deidre have these hot dog fingers. It's like their fingers are as big as like fucking bratwurst, like out to here, and it looks so unpractical. But I mean, they want the universes to almost go from, just instead of running going green, going through a red light and it being a green light in another universe. Red means green, green means red, and another universe, kind of like the Doctor Strange shit. It's like, oh shit, everything's so weird. You're going when it says green instead of red. You're driving on the left side of the road. Y'all, watch out. Everything's all weird. That's not happening here. They're going even to the more nth degree of saying, this shit is weird. This shit is ridiculous. This shit has hot dog fingers. Like, that's the most ridiculous thing you could probably think. And the fact that they bring it back in the third act of like having, a romantic relationship in some other sort of universe, it actually kind of like worked for me. And so this movie's not going to work for everybody. I got to say that. I probably should have said that at the beginning of this podcast, that it is ultra ridiculous, but you got to be on board with that. If you don't like the first act, there's no reason for you to go to the second and third act. But if you're intrigued, I think that's where they got you. And so another universe where Evelyn, she works alongside a teppanyaki chef who is secretly puppeteered by a ratatouille-like raccoon. I mean, literally, the guy has a raccoon in his hat, and the raccoon is like telling this guy how to cook, just like fucking Ratatouille. It's like a parody of it. And that oddly works. I was like, Jesus, I didn't think all this ridiculousness was going to come back to hit me in such a formative way. That's why I kind of really like this this movie, of how ridiculous it gets. And so, yeah, she learns that Jobu Tubaki created the everything bagel, or the black hole, so to speak, not to destroy everything, but to destroy herself, and has been searching for an Evelyn who can understand her. The whole part of that is in our main timeline. Evelyn and Joy are not getting along. They are both not seeing eye to eye, and she's always being criticized about the way she looks, who she dates, what she if she's looking a little heavy that day or not. I can relate to these things so well, because I mean, I felt like these were things my father was saying. It's like, I don't remember. My dad would be like, "Oh, I see you lost some weight today," or "I see you gain. I see you. Are you getting back in the gym?" Kind of thing. I'm saying I should be in the gym. It's like, I didn't ask you for how I looked. I asked, how your day was, or that type of thing. My dad used to always kind of hit me with, "Oh, I can see you lost a lot of weight." And I was like, I wasn't trying to lose weight. Thanks, Dad. That kind of thing. I've can relate. And so, uh, so Jobu feels, I'm just going to call it Jobu Tubaki, the bad guy. Jobu feels that because there are so many vast universes and unending chaos, nothing truly matters. In other universes, the Wangs are about to lose the laundromat due to tax errors, which is actually predominantly affects people, immigrants from other countries, and people from other places a whole lot more predominantly than the average American citizen, probably. Um, Depending on if you're a minority or not, it's sometimes they can be more they can scrutinize your business and kind of comb through every single little bit of your business a lot harder than other businesses. It's amazing what some corporations can get away with these days. Um, so the Wangs in another universe are about to lose the laundromat due to tax errors, and businessman Wayman rejects movie star Evelyn after decades apart. Um, Evelyn is nearly swayed to Jobu's cause and stabs her universe's Wayman. Sorry, Evelyn is nearly swayed to Jobu's cause and stabs her universe's Wayman. She almost joins Tobu and entering the bagel, but stops when she hears Wayman's calls to be kind and have hope. Everything Wayman is saying feels very um, forthright. Evelyn defeats Alpha Gong Gong and Jobu's Tubaki's fighters by using her multiverse knowledge to find out what is hurting each of them and gives them happiness. It's literally killing them with kindness. And instead of like fighting everybody at the end of this movie, she's like, she taps into people's minds like almost Doctor Strange style. And the guy, you'll find that they'll do a quick flashback of a guy that maybe was left out of the Halloween candy, and he's always wanted his favorite candy bar. She turns around, whips it up, and hits him on the head with it, bam, and gives him that. You find she goes to another guy and like does the Doctor Strange thing, reads their mind, and you find out there was a puppy or something that they never got as a kid. So she does like a twirly flip thing, and then brings a little puppy up and gives it to the bad guy. And she goes through like 20 different guys, like beating them up with kindness. Literally, she wouldn't like knock them out. She would just literally give them what they wanted. And she becomes like the ultimate Doctor Strange parallel universe alpha version of Evelyn. And I was like, what is going on? This was the coolest shit I've seen. Killing them with kindness, literally. um, so uh, Evelyn reaches Jobu Tabaki and tells her that she is not alone and that Evelyn will always choose to be with her despite everywhere else she could be. Meanwhile, in a parallel universe, Evelyn confronts Gong Gong and reconciles with Wayman and Joy. And Wayman convinces Deirdre to let the Wangs redo their taxes, because this whole thing is about them like sitting there at the IRS tax office and then just like coming through all of their stuff and being like, I don't know if you have all your taxes in order. Um, and Jobu Tubaki initially rejects Evelyn, but returns to her and they embrace. Part three, all at once. Shortly thereafter, the family's relationships and lives have improved. Becky is now regarded as part of the family. Wayman and Evelyn share a brief but romantic moment for the first time in a long while, and they return to the IRS building on a second chance to file their taxes. As Deidre talks, Evelyn's attention is momentarily drawn to her alternate selves in the multiverse before she grounds herself back in her home universe. Honestly, that's the entire movie, and I want to go back and watch it again myself, just talking about it. I really feel like there's so many different scenes, so many different types of universes that we visit, the world building, the acting, the choreography, the ideas, the ambition. This movie has it all. And I know it's not going to work for everybody, but it worked for me because mostly because I feel like when we're talking about these multiverses these days, there's so many movies that are trying to do multiverse, Spider Verse, all this type of shit. Um, they're not able to fully flesh out interesting universes and our main character and some sort of bad guy antagonist at the same time, but they were able to do that in folds, show multiple different universes. We don't have to visit the entire universe, but just kind of get a grounding for what that universe is like. And I really do feel like this movie describes it better than anything, better than, I don't know. many movies have. And there are like, what I'd say is like, there are intentional feats of it not being 100% tied up neatly. Um, I gotta say the parts of having Michelle Yeoh kind of being overly critical in certain scenarios, talking about like Jenny Slate's character as the Debbie, the dog mom, who they talk about having a bigger nose or something like that. They definitely they have that type of critique at the very end. They show Evelyn and Joy talking, and it's not kind of I love you for everything kind of thing. Maybe it's an Evelyn still putting her foot down, saying, you know what, I maybe I do criticize you, the way you look too often, but it's only because I love you kind of thing. It's not a I criticize you and I retract that I criticize you. It's a I do it out of love kind of thing. And I kind of understand that uh, that's more or less how life is. I think that most people don't completely retract what they say like they do in a lot of movies. They'll be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I didn't mean to say that, it came out wrong kind of thing. Normally it's um, they do a full retraction of whatever the main character did, and there's a big apology at the very end of the movie. This is not there's a big apology, there's more or less more explanation and understanding between the characters, which definitely feels much more relatable in hindsight. So yeah, this is Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's a 9 out of 10. um, for me, it's one of the best movies I've seen in years, mostly just from its ambition and how it's able to kind of bring everything together. It's got an 8.3 on IMDb, and I think like a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes. So people really like it. Metacritic's got 82%, which is still pretty high. Um, but yeah, a lot of people. The first review right here says on Google, it says this movie is easily going on my top 10 movies of all time list. I mean, I really do think that the people that this is going to connect with, it's going to blow their minds in the best way. And the poster for it, I think the trailer for it was pretty good too, if I'm not mistaken. Just the cinematography, the way that everything is lined up from the multiverse standpoint, I was just blown away, and it's so much fun. On top of that, let me see if there's anything else that we can talk about this from. Oh, and I didn't even talk about where the planet they became rocks. Yeah, they go through this whole scenario of them fighting each other in different universes, and then one universe they get stuck in and they're rocks. They turn into rocks with googly eyes. And I was like, dude, this movie is just so awesome in so many ways that I couldn't stand how awesome it was. I guess that's not the right word. It's just like so out there. And I feel like a lot of movies aren't out there. I know a lot of A24 movies are out there. I mean, I just talked about Hereditary. That's a pretty ballsy movie, but it's still kind of within the wheelhouse of being uh, an oppressive horror film. Everything All at Once, Everything Everywhere All at Once is almost hard to describe with how out there it is. But for me, it worked in the best ways possible. Let me see if there's anything else. So all the visual effects for this film were done by uh, 9 people, including 2 directors, with the majority of the shots being done by a core group of 5 people. None of the visual effects team went to school for visual effects. They were all friends who taught themselves with tutorials they found online for free. That is amazing. Um, like holy shit, you don't have to go to college anymore, these special schools. You can do the real stuff, the big stuff, just with uh, the tools you have for free. um, Ki Hyun Kwan, known as Jonathan Kwan, I believe, is an actor we haven't seen for years, and he is so good in this. It makes me sad that we haven't seen him in American cinema for. I haven't seen him in American cinema for years. Yeah, okay, so most people will recognize him as Short Round from Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, or Data on the Goonies, and he was amazing in those movies. He's in two memorable ass movies that a lot of people can remember just growing up with. Um, and then from there, he was in Passenger, Sigrashibi Hibi movie. I'm not sure what that is. Uh, Nothing is Easy television series. Breathing Fire. I'm not sure what that is. Head of Class television. Tales of the Crypt. Okay, that's 91. Encino Man 92. Red Pirate 97. Second Time Around 2002. And then Finding Ohana was 20, just about 20 years later. Um, so he wasn't doing anything from the filmography standpoint, as an actor. What I mean, not that he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't acting actively um, between like 2002 and 2021. So this dude is amazing. He's still got it. He's got the charisma. He's got the timing. He's got the moves when he's playing kind of like his like Walter White, doofy dad kind of thing, or you know, and then changing with putting on like chewing some gum and putting a Bluetooth headset on, and then all of a sudden just doing the moves. I was like, dude, this guy's amazing. I was floored by it. I just wished that he had been doing things, the past 20 years. I mean, he's so good. Um, so yeah, let's see. He even shouts out the "snap out of it" line from Indiana Jones, that he says again in this movie, which I liked. Um, in an unusual move, the majority of the film's scenes were shot at a high frame rate. This was done to give the editors the flexibility to put different parts into slow motion that weren't originally planned to be. So um, there was there's a lot of very interesting, behind the scenes information that you can find on Everything Everywhere All at Once. I hope this podcast kind of helped, uh, you know, help you broaden your knowledge of the movie and encourage you to at least watch the movie if you have gotten this far and haven't seen it already. But thank you for listening, watching LuckyDog Podcast. Be sure to go to luckydogpodcast.com for all of the entire library. You can find it there. You can also go to YouTube, help subscribe, hit a plus. What is a thumbs up? Um, Help us grow, helps the podcast. Every subscriber helps us gain a little bit closer to being monetized and getting a little bit of money in our pockets. So thank you, and take it easy.